I think it's on like 3 or 4 platforms, so it's a lot.
Oh, that
It's
makes
on
sense. Okay, that's
YouTube, Instagram, Substack, okay, and I don't know. So anyway, it's a lot all at once.
technology is so cool. I'm glad that
He figured it out.
yeah, exactly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Life Check Yourself Live. Guess what? We're talking about dating. So, if you were following me for a million years around dating, we're talking about dating, and I'm super excited to introduce you to Tim Molnar. Molnar, did I say it right?
Yeah,
I
nailed
did.
it.
Woohoo. As you can see from his background, if you're actually watching this, which you should be, he wrote this book called Date Smarter. And he uses research backed strategies and social science to help you date better. Uh, I love this idea because it's academia and science with practical experience to help you date differently today in 2026. Um, and you're gonna love it. And you're also gonna buy his book. He's also a super smarty pants. So he's a former Fulbright teaching fellow. What does that even mean, Tim?
There is a Fulbright organization that places folks overseas, and so after I finished up my undergrad studies, I spent a couple of years over in Austria through that program, doing some teaching, doing some research, and then ended up going to grad school after that. Um, Worked with a sociologist, taught some sociology, and then wanted to apply those methods to dating, things that people actually care about more so than just like writing papers that would sit in these journals that would be read by 8 people. So that's what I'm doing now.
Well, I have a daughter who's getting her PhD. I'm going to be one of the 8 people that reads her papers. So I'm sure your family was very sad to not read your papers anymore. Um, so that's so great. I'm super excited. Okay, so look, the truth is I'm doing a ton of dating coaching still, and I'm super curious where you are now with your clients, like with the trust recession, with the apps, with the very, in my opinion, sometimes over amplified, fuck the patriarchy, which makes women hate men, and just plus life and women being more independent, more confident. And really, honestly, we don't and we never did need them since you stopped killing our food. Um, so what's going on? Like, what are the problems, bottlenecks? Like, what is going on right now for you that you see?
Yeah, I love that framing. And one of the things that I use is I try and use a lot of frameworks in my work to simplify things. And I have a quiz on my website that helps people identify where they're getting stuck, what type of hurdles they're encountering in dating. There are a few that I turn to in specific. Those are burnout, inertia, exposure, and conversion.
Okay.
Burnout is what we hear about a lot. There was a study published in Forbes about a year ago that says 78% of online daters are feeling burnt out. Basically, there's this difference between the effort we're putting in and the reward we're getting back. We're like swiping and swiping and swiping. We're trying to message and either not meeting up for dates at all, or we do, and then we don't hear back. It's disappointing. And it's hard to keep going. It's like if you were to go to the gym and lift weights and like get weaker over time, you're like, I'm not gonna keep doing this. Um,
Definitely not.
and then another one I see a lot is inertia.
Okay.
Inertia is just like something slowing us down, something standing in the way of getting started. There's a hesitancy there. It's I'll lose 10 pounds and then I'll be ready to date. Or once work slows down, I'll be ready to date. We have all of these good intentions around getting out there and doing something, but we're just not taking the small behaviors to make it happen. We're not
Mm.
leaving the house. We're not going to the events
That's
or
a
like
problem if you're not
yeah.
leaving. By the way, if you're trying to date and you don't leave your house, that might be a problem. Um, so let me ask you about inertia just for quickly, because before we talk about the other ones. Because when you really read that list, I say that's the someday bullshit. Like you're waiting, but like deep down you're afraid. So would you say, because if I think about the burnout, like that's just a combo of everything, right? Like there's fear, there's technology, hurdles. We could talk about that. There's a lot of things, but with this inertia thing, is it? Is that the inner work, like where that people get stuck mostly there because they have an internal block versus an external struggle mostly?
Yeah, super well articulated. It's often rooted in some type of fear. It could be a fear of intimacy, it could be a fear of vulnerability, it could be a fear of rejection. And these can be really helpful protective mechanisms in many ways.
Right.
But in this context of dating and needing to actually get over that hump, to be able to take agency, to be able to begin taking these little actions that improve our probabilities of getting at the outcome we want, they can be really detrimental. So that's really what I mean by inertia and what I'm seeing with folks who select into that.
Okay, that's great. So if you're resonating with that, I just called you out and Tim just explained it. Okay, what's next?
So there's this related idea, but it's distinct, which I term exposure. And this is really the size of our social footprint. So
Okay.
I refer to it as having a high social coefficient. Do we leave our house? Are we in places that have a high likelihood of interacting with other people? If we leave our house to go work and we're at a coffee shop, are we sitting at the community table? Are we over in the corner? If we actually do go to an event, is it something where there's a high likelihood of talking with people? Something like a book club is like, great, you're probably going to chat with someone. If you go to a concert by yourself, less likely that you're having those interactions. So it really differentiates this overt versus covert avoidance. And like we can overtly avoid things and like stay in our basement and play video games, or we can covertly avoid things and we can head out to a social event and not engage in a meaningful way with people.
And I think that is so huge because people when you're hiding even though you're out, it's those fears are just resonating in a different they're just showing up in a different like outfit, right? Because you're still trying to be small, you're still afraid of being seen, you're still afraid of rejection, all those sorts of things. So, and I just in my as I can't help myself calling people out, I think that one is one where people will tell me, I'm doing everything, like I'm doing everything. I'm joining things or I'm going out or I'm whatever, right? And it's like you are, but how are you feeling when you go out and are you interacting or are you just hiding? So I think that's really cool. And I love that you made it sciencey with use the word coefficient because it just sounds smart and cool. Okay, what's the fourth one?
The fourth one is conversion, and this is somewhat of a catch-all for folks who maybe don't resonate with those first three, but
Okay.
it's really this idea that there are these logical progressions along the way to meeting a life partner. And first, it's being able to meet people, then it's having those conversations, going on a date, following up after that date, going on a second date. And so a lot of people who I work with, for example, will go on a bunch of first dates and you'll ask them, like, when was the last time you went on a second date? And it's like, well, there's just no good dudes out there. And it's like, well, if you went on 50 dates and didn't find like one person that you could have at least like a 6.5 out of 10 good time with, um, that's problematic, and really encourage folks to run experiments of like what would happen if you opted into that second date as a default. Clearly not if there are major red flags and
Right.
incompatibilities, but to run this this iteration and say like, do I have at least a 6.5 out of 10 again? Did that move up to a 7 out of 10? And if it's moving in the wrong direction, like, of course it doesn't need to have a third date. But what gets lost when we have these kind of like one hit wonder type dating sprees is this mere exposure effect, this idea that like when we spend time around people, we develop more of an affinity for them. And it's why like a lot of relationships used to begin at work. You spend a lot of time and you didn't think someone was that great, first of all. And then you realize over time they have this funny sense of humor and they're the first one to volunteer for extra work and they're really kind. And you're like, huh,
He's cute.
yeah.
And I think this is I love this one because I always, I always say like it's heart set, mindset, or skill set, right? Like you've got to
Mhm.
progress in the funnel. This is like, you know, your dating profile is on Times Square. Like, are people clicking? If they're clicking but they're not buying, they're buying but they're not buying again, right? Like unfortunately, that's kind of the best analogy I can find if that frustrates you, but that is true, right? Because um, when you're not converting, when you're not moving down, and I always say you are the common denominator in that,
Mm.
are you willing to take some responsibility and look at what are the things that I can do that are within my control to escalate that conversion by either checking, is it a skill? Am I being, am I uncomfortable? I had a client once who went on dates and she wasn't comfortable with her physical self. And she used to wear these like little sweater vest things. And so I used to do these mock dating experiences. And the whole time, all she was doing was like adjusting this cardigan like over herself because she just felt so uncomfortable. And, those little things that you might be doing that you're leaking your fear, your insecurity, your discomfort, whatever it is, and that can affect conversion. So you can't change everything, but what are the things that you can change to impact the conversion? Are there, so when you look and you zoom back, and hopefully you're all like, oh, maybe one of those reasons is why I'm still single. Maybe it's not men suck or the apps suck. What's one thing we can do for each of these to start to move forward and get out of our own way?
For burnout, we can critically examine how we're using apps. Those are a huge source of burnout, and setting limits for yourself that feel feasible to protect your mental health could be something like, you know, 3 times a week for 15 minutes a day. Or if you're worried about missing a message, you could do, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, something like that. But where we're setting a timer before we log in so that we're
Yeah.
not falling into that scroll trap. That can be a good one for folks who are experiencing burnout. Inertia is really about breaking things down into small fundamental steps. And so if you are struggling to leave the house, it's probably not saying like, great, let me research 24 different activities that I could do and plan to go to all of them and talk to 25 people. It's let me find one activity and let me put it on my calendar so that I have a time, a place, and a behavior. And that's all the time I need to spend on dating for this week. It's like one little thing. And with that, we get this proof point. And now we say, great, I just casted a vote for the type of dater that I want to be, someone who has agency, someone who takes things into my own hands. And once I went to that trivia night and like had a fun conversation, and sure, like maybe didn't meet my person, but had a decent time, now I can go back and take a small step again. I can say, great, instead of heading to yoga class on Tuesday where I know all the people, I'm going to head to the Wednesday yoga class this week. Just like one small step.
And go 10 minutes early so you can talk to the person. Here's the other thing about yoga, guys, because I'm having my 1 year yoga versary. I think it's a great place to meet men. Most women don't want to have a spot by the big sweaty men. So if you go sort of toward the later part, or you take a spot next to the big sweaty man, nobody wants that spot. You could take that spot and you can go 10 minutes early and you could talk to that big sweaty man. And maybe he isn't your person, but maybe he has some friends, or maybe you just make a new connection and he tells you about a work event and you end up going to that event and you meet some people. So I'm all about optimizing where you show up and being strategic about it. And that is my favorite thing about yoga, is that spot is always available.
Mm.
I only know because I had that spot the other day, and I call them handstand boys. They're just huge and they're just doing handstands, and one of them was super cute. I'm married, but okay. So take a baby step, take an action. And I love also the way you created that identity statement about like, I'm one of the daters. What did you say? Who marks herself or identifies herself as taking an intentional step in dating? How did you say that?
Yeah. Who casts a vote in favor of the type of dater that I want to be?
Yes, I love that. Yes.
And I think that's a big one for inertia. For exposure, there are a lot of different ways that we can start to overcome this. It's also taking small steps. And so I loved what you said about getting to yoga class 10 minutes early. Getting back to this like covert and overt avoidance. It's like, great, we're leaving the house so we have more exposure. But if we're getting there right when class starts and getting the place in the corner and then like jetting out as soon as it's over, we're missing the prime social like the peak social opportunity, and that just doesn't do well for improving our probability in a substantive way. So instead, yeah, being there a little bit early, or thinking really intentionally about like where are those high social friction areas, that community table, getting to an event early. Those are the types of things that people who are facing exposure really need to double down on.
Yeah, and I've been hearing some people say, "Oh, it's really hard to meet people in real life, or it's hard to make friends, or whatever." And I moved to Steamboat 3 years ago, and as an adult, I actually think it's easier to make friends because there's no mean girls and no gross boys. You know what I mean? But like generally speaking, if someone join a group, whether it's a writing group or a study group or a movie group or whatever, there's like literally everything, even in a small town. um, Most people join those things because they want connection. They want to have a great conversation. And so don't be the girl who walks in and is like, oh, there's no guys there. So what? Right? Like, talk to the people, let them know what you're looking for, and make a friend who can introduce you to someone else. Right? Because humans are everywhere. So I'm here to also debunk the myth that it's like hard to meet people, because I think there's so many in person opportunities these days.
We also love to chat with people, and there's great research that underlies that. There's someone named Nick Epley out of the University of Chicago who does a lot of these different studies, and basically says there's this pluralistic ignorance where we are all at the coffee shop waiting for someone to come talk to us, thinking that like, gosh, I don't want to be the creepy one. But then when we reflect back on the last time that someone came up and was like, hey, do you mind watching my stuff? And then like when they come back from the bathroom or whatever, are like, what are you working on today? That 9 out of 10 times we're really excited about that, and we drastically underestimate how much we enjoy these conversations and interactions, both when we're the ones initiating them as well as when we're the ones on the receiving end. Um, and other people also like really enjoy seeing these things. So like you can just make someone else's day by having this conversation and restoring this
Totally.
idea that there are like friendly, nice people out there who just want to interact and connect. And like people know that we're in the middle of this loneliness epidemic. And so if you're one of the ones who can take initiative and take that first step, people really do appreciate it.
I also love, here's my other tip. I'm giving these great little tips because it's just reminding me of everything. When you go to the coffee shop or whatever, bring an actual real book, right? Or something with a forward facing conversation opener, like there, right? Because if you're on your Kindle or you're just on your iPad reading a book or whatever, it's harder to create, or you're wearing earbuds. You want to, like, you know, have something that someone has the context to talk about. And that's really easy. You just scan the room and you're like, oh, I like their shoes. I like that book. What coffee do you usually get? Like, use the context as a way to create the question, and you make it easy for people to engage with you if that's your intention, is to increase your exposure by having those accessories around you that are
Yeah.
invitational, right?
Yeah, you've got the sticker of Bryce Canyon
Yes.
on the back of your laptop, and they're like, "Wait, I've been to Bryce. Like, what other parks have you been to?" Like, you have the T-shirt with the Patriots on it, and they're like, "Oh
Yes.
man, like, what'd you think of Super Bowl?" It just again, it makes it a lot easier, and it allows people like a natural on ramp to approach you. So especially if you're like, "Great, I'm out here and I'm doing the hard thing of not being on my phone, of not having noise canceling headphones on. I'm still experiencing some social anxiety around being the one to initiate." Make it easier for other people to
Yeah.
initiate.
I love that. Be the magnet that's open, not the magnet that's like falling away.
Yes.
Okay, how do we overcome the last one? What was the last one?
The last one's conversion.
Conversion. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about this before. So, one of the ways that I see this manifest most frequently is around folks not opting into that second date.
Yeah.
So, really just having that default mindset that if this is a 6 out of 10 or better, I'm going to suggest a follow up date within 24 hours, and having something that's time bound, that's specific. So, you're following up, hey, I had a great time. Would love to see you again. Would you be up for dinner next Tuesday at this spot? And be the one to initiate, to make a plan. So at least even if they're not free on Tuesday, you have something to build from, and it doesn't get lost in that messaging back and forth. And like, oh, like, do you want to hang out sometime? And you're like, am I agreeing to like a weekend ski vacation up in Steamboat?
Right.
Or is this like a 20-minute walk before work? Like, I don't know what hang out again means. And like, so being specific, I think is helpful for moving things along.
And are you a fan of, because I know gender roles are so confused right now. Is it okay if a woman follows up after the date and says, "I had a really great time. I'd love to see you again"? If you had the meet date or the first date, when does that dynamic change and does it need to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of the information and tips I try to give are grounded in evidence and research that's been done. And with any of these studies, it's important to keep in mind that we're talking about averages. And so
Right.
something like, oh, Hinge finds that we should follow up with someone and suggest a date within 3 days. Okay, great. That means that on average, someone is comfortable following up and going on a date after 3 days. Does that mean that there are not people who are comfortable meeting up that same day or who might not need, 3 weeks of back and forth on the apps
Right.
and 2 video calls first? No, it doesn't mean that. These are averages. And so I think similarly to like get back to your question of like what is the appropriate gender roles? A lot of my male clients would love if you were the one to follow up as a
Right.
woman. Um, does that mean there aren't men who have more traditional viewpoints on this? Absolutely, that happens too. And so I don't think there's necessarily a black and white. I think it's understanding um, I want to be able to take agency. If this person doesn't respond to that, there could be some antiquated ideals that maybe don't mesh with the way that I see the world in 2026.
Okay, I have another question because we're talking about conversion. Um, I have a client who does the first date, and she's not converting so great because she's going on the first date, and it's literally like 5 hours. And the last date, and if you're listening, you know I'm talking to you. I always ask for her. The last date, she was like, I said 2 hours max, and she said I only have 2 hour validated parking. And then it was like a 7 hour date because it turned into dinner and all those things. And I feel like it's too much information, but it's not enough information. And someone can make some decisions about you that may or may not be true because they got like a fire hose. What do you think for the first date? Do you think limiting the time, like, is it an increase the conversion, the length and time increases for optimal conversion? What's Tim's opinion?
I
Or
think
do you
there's
have one?
again like a fair degree of variability here. I anecdotally, like my first substantive date with my partner was probably like a 7 hour long date. And I felt like that gave us a chance to really get to know each other and ask some deeper questions that for her signaled like, this is an interesting guy who's thoughtful and asks follow-up questions. And that's desirable. For other people, maybe they have a different social bandwidth and are coming after like a Thursday meeting that ended at like 5:30 with their boss where they were getting chewed out and now they're like worn out from like almost a full week and have a bunch of other things going on and it's like great, like I could keep going with this but like there are some diminishing marginal returns after a few hours here and I'm not able to show up in the way that I best want to and it's better to, say like, "Hey, great, parking's about up, I'm getting a blister on our hike, let's turn around."
Right.
And then follow up and say like, "I really did have a good time. I'd love to do this
Right.
again." And so, you know, I think it really is dependent. What I would say with respect to your client is if she's gone on a number of these marathon dates and they haven't led to a second date, then it's probably time to experiment and try something different
Right.
and see do different do doing different things result in different outcomes.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking as well is like you have to look at the data and then you just adjust and it doesn't mean anything about you or men or dating. We're all it's just is that uh, a pattern you see for yourself and so what's really going on. The other thing that we talked about which I think is interesting is some people are really good at the first couple of hours because they're good at chit chat and then when it starts to get deeper, maybe they say too much or they have a wall up or they feel uncomfortable. And so um, it's harder to do, right? Even though there's a vibe and all those things. So I think what you're saying, Tim, is like with conversion, it's look for patterns. If there's a major pattern, interrupt it, ask good questions and make an adjustment and then take that data and go from there.
I think that's what I was trying to say, but you just articulated it way better. And yes, but that's what I was getting at.
Okay, here's my next question. I love this one that you laid out for me because people find the apps exhausting, but they're literally addicted, like social media, and they're just like you said, they're just watching. Watched last night. Have you watched that new dating show with all the ages? The
I
age of
no.
you got to watch. It's on Netflix. So basically,
Okay.
there's like the 30 humans ages 22 to 60, and they date in a week at this retreat in Canada, and then but they don't tell each other how old they are, and then it's like Love is Blind, where after they
Mhm.
commit or promise, then they have to go live together, and it's literally ridiculous and insane. um
I did see a preview for that, and I thought it was good because I not that I necessarily think the, like, 60-22 age differential is, like, totally prime and
and
ideal.
that's one of them. There's a 60-year-old, there's literally a 60-year-old with a 26-year-old.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I feel 2 things about it. I feel the, like, the kind of societal ick around, like, grooming and all of that. I also feel like there are more than just a handful of people who I know who didn't meet each other on apps because they were outside of the age filter. I was, I think, 1 year outside of my partner's age filter on apps, and so we wouldn't have met
Yeah.
if we were just swiping through Bumble or Hinge or whatever else, but met at a coffee shop and she's like, "Oh, this is an interesting guy," not, "This is a 30-year-old male who is precisely 1 year too old for me."
Right,
Um,
exactly.
so I think it's like there's a reasonability standard applied
Yeah.
to it,
Right.
right? And I think what is difficult is apps give us things to evaluate people on, so we place undue weight upon those things as important
Yes.
indicators, when in fact, someone being a year or 2 outside of your preferences probably isn't going to make a huge difference. The same way if you have a great conversation with someone at a bar and they stand up and they're like, "Oh my gosh, they're like 5'9" and my cutoff was 5'10", hopefully you're not gonna think, "Okay, yeah, this could never work."
Yes. I like that so much. I'm not even like opposed to because one of them, the woman's 54 and the guy's 26. So I'm just more like, do you want to have kids? I mean, she's 54, right? Like just the,
Mm.
but anyway, if you haven't watched that, I would, if you want to just, and fast forward through the conversations, just get to the good stuff. So why are people then, if there's all these limitations with apps and it makes us feel like shit over time and causes burnout, um, and even inertia, I would say, because people are just like, I can't even deal. Like I'm helping clients load some stuff on figuring out the filters on Match.com. I'm really good at technology, and it's actually hard to figure out some of these apps. So why do people get addicted to them?
Yeah, it's the same way that you get addicted to slot machines. We
Ah,
can go and we can lose, 8 times in a row, and yet we still come back to them because these intermittent rewards are highly unpredictable
right.
and they have a very addictive underlying psychological mechanism. And it comes from this research actually from a psychologist by the name of B.F. Skinner who tested this out with pigeons. And he ran this fascinating experiment where he would have these pigeons peck at a little lever, and when they'd peck at the lever, a piece of food would come out. Um, Half of the pigeons had a consistent reward scheme. So they'd peck, a piece of food would come out, they'd peck, a piece of food would come out. So that when he stopped delivering food, they figured out pretty quickly, great, I'm not going to peck anymore. The other half of the pigeons were put on an intermittent reward schedule. So they'd
Oh
peck, they'd get
gosh.
a little food, then they'd peck a few more times, it wouldn't come, then they'd peck, it would come again, but not at a predictable frequency. And so when the food stops getting delivered, they just keep pecking and pecking and pecking until they're just completely exhausted. Or,
Poor
in our
pigeons.
context, like we're the exhausted pigeons swiping and swiping and swiping and wondering why we keep coming back. It's because these intermittent reward are so highly addictive.
Yeah, I mean, also if we were playing a drinking game, you would be drunk if the word was peck.
Yes,
How many times?
absolutely. Oh my gosh.
But we don't want to be those pigeons. I mean, so that's what you're talking about having boundaries around it, right? Like, I'm only going to do this. I coach my clients to do like 20 minutes a day, and I have like a very sort of rigid-ish thing to avoid some of those things. But so it's like a little willpower in the end, or how do you get? I mean, what if you need the fucking pigeon food?
They are addictive, and so I think that, like, there needs to be some self-awareness, and then also we are not great at willpower as human beings.
Right,
So if we
right.
can design our environment and create behavioral nudges that push us in the right direction, that's really helpful. So if you know that you have a meeting that's starting at 10 and you're like, "Great. I know that if I pull out my app at 9:45, I have to be off of this in 15 minutes because I'm doing something else." Maybe that's not feasible with the type of work that you have, but maybe you're meeting up with a friend. Maybe you have yoga. Maybe you have some other pre existing commitment where you can say, even if I don't have the willpower, I'm creating the conditions, designing my environment to support me in the goals that I have, which is to not be on this for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, I mean, you just gotta get off the crack. Also, you could, have an accountability with a friend. You could be like, "I'm gonna go on here for 10 minutes. Like, call me," or I'm gonna, um, yeah, because otherwise, and also I think that that makes it generally then you're part of the problem where the apps become so transactional that you're literally walking down the aisle at Whole Foods going, that looks good. Nah, no, I shouldn't get that looks good. I mean, also that's like $20 for like 4 potato chips. I mean, you're just kind of walking around and you're like, you're saying yes and then you're saying no, and then there's something else and you're saying yes and you're saying no. So you're kind of like reinforcing patterns, and then you're not being the dater you want to attract, which is someone who's being intentional, taking it seriously, going on there, doing their thing, getting off, actually trying to have dates in real life.
Retweet. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think then that apps are helping people find love, or do you think they're just like just another version of Instagram?
Yeah. There's this interesting duality where both narratives are true. There's a sociologist out of Stanford by the name of Michael Rosenfeld. He studies how people meet and stay together. As of 2017, more people meet online than any other place, and that's about 60% in heterosexual couples today, higher for LGBTQ couples. Um, so for sure, a lot of people are meeting there. At the same time, as we mentioned earlier, almost 80% of people who are using these are burnt out. So it really is about recognizing these are great servants, but terrible masters. And we should look to apps as an introduction tool, not a way to try and find validation, not a way to try and while away time, not a way to try and tame our anxiety when we're feeling dysregulated.
Yeah, and also it's not the place to get to know the person.
Mm.
Like, I just want to highlight underscore that. Get off the app. Like, and I think that that's why it becomes all those other things that you said, because it's the lazy person's like who's afraid and they're in inertia, so they'll do the one thing and then they'll be like, yeah, text me, and then a guy will text and they'll be like, hey, I really like chatting, and then they have like 27 unread messages on their phone, right?
Mhm.
So we don't want to perpetuate the problem. So having the meeting the person, like, you love that you said it's like a tool for introduction, and then actually get into real life. Stop texting, stop messaging, put down your phones. I'm such a
Yeah.
grandma. Kids.
No, but it's like you're either stuck in this paradox of choice where, yeah, we don't know how to make value aligned decisions with too many options, or on the other hand, there's a scarcity mindset where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I finally have a match with someone and they're finally messaging back. I don't want to suggest something and have this kill the connection too soon." And the paradox is like this connection is going to die because you drag it out, and this person's not looking for a digital pen pal. They're looking to meet up and go on a date and see if this could work.
Yeah, and if they're not looking for that, then stop texting them for like 3 months. Um, and if they're not willing to do a FaceTime at least, or they live in like, and they're in Alaska on a fishing boat, probably get on that FaceTime as soon as you can.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah,
They might not be real.
no, it's like the
Um,
startup mentality. It's like fail fast, fail
that's what
fast.
I say. Fail fast. And I also I really like applaud. By the way, Christine, thanks for all your messages. She's saying she got weirded out and agrees that that's a big stretch for the age gaps we talked about with that Netflix show. So we're so happy that you are here and commenting. Um, so the thing is too that when you look at these gender roles, I think people also get so in their head, Tim, about the rules. And I was at a bookstore the other day and I was like, literally the rules is still on the shelf. It was written in the 80s. Is
Mhm.
that person even alive? I don't know. Someone Google that. Um, so do you think the rules still apply? Like that there's that like, men love bitches. Like, what's the truth in 2026 with all the data that you have?
The rules have changed dramatically. What is, I think, interesting is where we used to think there was one set of rules that applied to society as a whole, or there was
Mm.
at least a conception that that was the case. Now there are so many different narratives, and like there is a resurgence in people who are like, oh yeah, like I do want to be a trad wife, or I do want a trad wife, and like that is a portion of the population. There are also a lot of like emotionally intelligent men who are like, that's like I'm actually really excited about someone who like goes after their career, um and so it's become a more complicated narrative, and I think we like these clear black and white ideas of like, this is the rule, this is what I should be doing, these are the social norms that I need to abide by. When in reality, we're not looking to get as many matches as possible. We're looking to get one right match. And so if
Yes.
someone is not aligned on how the rules or how the societal norms should function, there's a good chance that they have some fundamental, like underlying value differentials. And it's so good to fail fast with them. So good. So I think the rules in 2026 are what makes you feel comfortable? How are you
Mm.
taking agency? How can you do that? And see and create and filter for the type of people who agree with that worldview.
Yeah, and I love the fail fast, like you're a startup. First of all, hi Heather, so happy to see you. Yay. Um, Let us know if you have a question for Tim. Um, because I think that we have this idea that failure is bad, right? And like, I think that every interaction that you have is information and it helps you clarify and solidify and look at yourself, right? Um, and so if you're not getting those dates, rather than go, see, I suck, never mind, and then just, binge Bridgerton and swipe, and then you're going to get really horny. So I do not recommend that. Women, ladies, don't watch endless amounts of Bridgerton and just swipe because you might do something you regret. Um, but it's like we want to be able to take some sort of action and reframe the failure is again that identity statement you said was so powerful because um I love you said it only takes one. There is one person, literally, for everyone who's listening, who's here, and you're looking for a partner. Literally, there's one person out there orbiting on the planet right now who's literally saying to themselves, I just want to meet my person. And that could be you. And if you're not leaving your house and you're not looking at all these patterns that Tim talked about, like there's no way he can't find you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think this idea of failure is based on the assumption that we're trying to optimize for as many people as possible liking us. Similarly, like we don't need to get a job offer from every tech company. In fact, we probably don't want to get a job offer from a tech company that is going to be a toxic fit. Instead, finding a no from that or figuring out this isn't going to be a fit, like that's actually success because you're not setting yourself up for something that is going to create long-term incompatibilities. So yeah, this idea of failure is kind of an interesting one to push back on and really ask yourself, what is it that you're trying to optimize for?
Okay, my last question. By the way, if you have any questions for Tim, feel free to put them in the chat. Um, Last thing, do you think people want to be approached in real life? I talked to some men, even in their 20s, like of all ages, I asked this question. And even the 20-year-olds were like, I literally can't, I'm so afraid of being like called a perv or, or asking someone for their number. Like that's why everyone's using, the kids are using Snapchat or Instagram or whatever. I don't know what adults are using, probably still Instagram. But do you think, like, how do you approach in real life? Should you approach in real life?
Context matters for sure. And I hear that so frequently that you don't want to come across as creepy. I think that's like one of the biggest fears right now. Again, the research does not support that people do not want to be approached. It supports the exact opposite. So that gentleman who I was talking about earlier, who's done this research, he interviews people who are getting onto the train in Chicago, and he asks them, "Do you think you want to have a conversation, or do you think you'd be happier without?" And in almost 100% of the cases, we underappreciate and we say like, "Oh, like I don't think I really want to have a conversation." And then after we actually have that, it is basically unanimous that we do. So the question is really, how do we, based on the context, do this in a way that makes someone else feel comfortable? And so I think what we're scared of is this like dark alley going up and saying something inappropriate to someone. And like for the
Right.
vast number of people who are like being thoughtful and seeking out information on this, they're not the one that people are worried about. Um, but the question still becomes like, so how do you do it? And it's figuring out what is contextually appropriate. So if you're standing in a line, it's a great place to have a conversation. People are just waiting. There are other folks around. It's a well-lit environment. One of the easiest things that works in a lot of different contexts, like you show up to an event or something and you're like, oh, is it always this busy? Is it always this quiet? Works in most places. And it's an easy way to like get things going. And like you'll hear pretty quickly if someone like doesn't want to have a conversation, they'll give you a one-word answer. You're like, great, okay, perfect. Like that wasn't a creepy thing to say. That was perfectly fine. So it's just finding that contextual fit.
Oh, so good. So if there's one thing in your book that people like won't find anywhere else and they're like they got to go out, and we can put the link to the book in the chat. Like what is that?
Hmm. I'd say there's the one message that I'd like people to take away from, and then there's maybe one thing that is unique to the book.
Okay.
So one thing that's unique to the book is the idea of having some type of date number. Date number is some type of goal for getting very clear on what actions you're willing to commit to in service of finding your person. So
Mm.
maybe that's going to 4 events per month, 4 new events per month. Maybe it's having 15 conversations in 2026 with new people. Something where you can like check these off and reframe that quote unquote failure as great. Only 14 more conversations, 13 more
It's
conversations.
like your dating bingo card.
I love that. I've never thought of it through that lens, but that's
Like,
I'm gonna
yeah,
have to
like
go
I'm
back
gonna
and
talk to 4 people at a coffee shop. I'm gonna only swipe for 15 minutes for 5 days in a row. I don't know. I just think it could be a bingo card.
no, I love that. And then I think the one thing I would leave folks with is we optimize and we are intentional in so many aspects of life. We
Hmm.
plan our finances, plan our education, we plan out our week so that we can be healthy, both mentally, physically, socially, but we spend less time thinking through how can I be intentional and regain agency in my dating life. And so instead of waiting for this Hollywood narrative to fulfill itself and like someone's going to spill coffee on you and there's going to be this like meet cute moment, it's like no, like show up to yoga 10 minutes early, sit at the community table, be willing to opt into a recurring event like a book club or like a Saturday trail maintenance crew where you're going to see the same faces over and over and over again. You're going to improve that social coefficient, and you're not going to fall into that covert avoidance where you're not being the one to reach out and initiate and say hi.
I love this. Tim calls you out, but he uses science words and sounds so much nicer.
It kind of distances me. It's like, according to the research,
I know. I love that. I'm like, Tim just said it nicer with evidence. Okay, Heather, let's answer Heather's question because she asked us one. She says, what type of questions Tim, do you ask a man to get a genuine answer instead of a phony front?
Ooh,
Ooh.
I love that question. It's a thought-provoking one. I think it is really about digging deeper into something they've already said. So I don't know if there's like a magic unlock in terms of like, this is the first question that I should ask, and they'll reveal like all of their trauma, and I'll
Right.
immediately know if this is going to be my person. And I don't think that's what you're driving at, Heather.
Right.
But I think there's more like, oh my gosh, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that. You'll recognize when someone is feeling excited about something, and asking them to expand gives that opportunity for them to open up and be a little bit more vulnerable. Like, ooh, like I feel heard. They recognize that like my intonation went up a little bit here, that I started speaking a little bit more quickly, that I'm excited about this. And then you asked me something that I feel excited about, like, that makes me feel good. Like, I feel amazing right now. Marty's been asking me all these questions for the last half hour here, and I've been able to like pontificate about whatever like studies that I want to talk about, and I feel great. And it's like, oh, Marty's really thoughtful. She's asking follow-up questions and digging deeper and understand like, oh, like Tim really does care about this stuff. And like as I ask more about this, and I say like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like, tell me more about that. Or like, "Wait, that sounds really tough. Like, how did that feel?" So I think it's more having those follow-up questions to dig deeper
Yes.
that's going to allow someone to open up in a way that's gonna hopefully feel more authentic for you, Heather.
Yeah, and I think the follow-up is so great. I think that women chicken out with the follow-up, like they don't want to be too much or too needy or make someone uncomfortable. But honestly, that's the test in itself. If they
Mhm.
don't, if they don't do it, then that's what you know. You know what you know. Okay, last question, unless anyone else has a question, but I wanted to ask this one just as a follow-up. If someone's on a date and the guy isn't asking a lot of questions and they're just talking, because I hear so many women be like, he didn't even ask me any questions. What's your way to interrupt, point that out, or do you just go, he sucks, I'm out?
I think making it into a bit of a joke can be a nice way to diffuse the situation, but
Love
also
that.
convey, seriousness. So it could even be something like, "Well, so I've heard a lot about you. What do you wanna know about me?" Can be a way to call someone out, but also in a way that makes them feel safe and just acknowledges like, "Oh, yeah, we have talked a lot about me." And then if there are no questions from there, it's like, "Yeah, okay.
He's out.
This isn't someone maybe that's gonna be a good fit for me."
You know what I would say? Because I'm kind of sassy, but you can tell me if this is bad. I would be like, wow, give me your mom's number because she did such a good job raising you. I know so much about you. Good job, mom. Now, what do you want to know about me?
No, it's definitely the funny yeah, that I like that. That's
It
funny.
is hard though. I think people do that in general. Like, just because I was talking to my friend about it who went on a date and that happened. And I was like, I'm married and I meet new people or I go out with couples and my husband and I will sit there and be like, my husband and I are like, isn't that weird? They literally asked nothing about us because we're just so good at interviewing people. And yeah, so it's not, if you're single, don't think that it's like a you problem. This is like a universal thing where people are just so okay, we have another question. Wow, you're really getting the questions, Tim. You're so popular. Okay, last one. Do most men like women who take charge and aren't afraid to ask questions? I think we kind of talked about this before, and I know there's no universal rule, but what would you say to Heather?
The right man is going to appreciate that.
Yes, love it.
Mhm. Yeah. Um I think again, getting back to this idea of we're trying to optimize often for being liked as opposed to understanding if we're being liked and creating something with the right person. And so if you're someone who asks thoughtful questions and is someone who takes agency in your life, what you don't want is to attract the wrong type of person and then feel stifled for the next 50 years in a relationship where you don't feel like you can express yourself in a way that's authentic.
Oh, I love it. If I wish, Imran, I wish we had like a thing that does the applause background. Yay! We love Tim. Isn't it? It's fun to make Tim smile. You're so cute, Tim. Okay. Aw shucks. Buy the book. Let's put the link in the chat. For sure. You guys definitely want to get this book. And we've got all of these. I mean, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram. We'll put all these up in the chat for now. I'll put the book thing up for now. And then you guys can see show notes or in the comments for the rest of it if you're on other platforms. Any last words, Tim, as we wrap it up today?
Just want to say thanks. I've had a blast today. You have an amazing energy, and I've had a lot of fun doing this.
Thank you. And thanks to Heather and Christine for being in the comments. It's so much more fun as a teacher to not be like that guy in Ferris Bueller where we go, Bueller, anyone? So thanks, ladies. Love you. All right. We'll be back another time. We'll get more dating guests. You guys obviously like it because I am an OG dating coach. But remember, in all ways, it's your responsibility to life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.